Hey everybody, Nick here, and today I got a video for you on this little guy right here. This is the Demko Knives Colorful Filth Deep Dive AD 20.5 pocket knife. This is a really cool little piece, and something that I'm very glad I get to take a look at, because it combines a knife that I really like, the Demko Knives AD 20.5, with art from an artist that I really like, that is ColorfulFilth, Paul Munko, right? And when those two things go together, turns out you get something pretty cool. And so I figured I'd show it off here. But actually, before we go any further, go ahead and let you know this guy was sent to me by Northern Knives and Paul. He reached out to me, said, "Hey Nick, I'm doing this new thing with Northern Knives. Would you be interested in checking it out?" And the answer was yes, absolutely. I'm a big fan of Paul's work, and I've checked it out a number of times before. You might remember this spaced out bug out. This, by the way, is not a property of the knife. That's just wear, because I've carried and used it a fair bit. It's a great knife. But anyways, or this beautiful pry bar they did is in collaboration with the Lynch Northwest. Really, really nice little piece here. I'm a big fan of their art, generally speaking. But they announced they were doing a new one of these guys, and I said, yeah, absolutely. But I told them, as always, I'm going to talk about the good, the great, the bad, the ugly. It might be a gem, it might be junk. They did still send it along. Nonetheless, we do have to assume that the very best quality-controlled prototype ever, and I'm doing my best not to let that affect the nature or the quality of my review. So what I'm going ahead and do today is take it apart, just so you can kind of see the inside of it, and so I can get it cleaned up. And as we're doing so, maybe I'll opine a little bit. I'm also going to install the pocket clip, which did not come installed in the knife, and talk about one of the changes that's coming up there, and then we'll talk about the knife sort of more broadly, give some impressions. But one other quick thing, let's do some size comparison. Here it is against Spyderco Delica. See here, it's not a huge knife, but it is of reasonable size. Then here it is against the Demko Knives AD 20.5. What we see here is these are the same knife, right? This is a stock AD 20.5 with smooth titanium handles. This one happens to have the shock foot blade, but you can also get it in the drop point in this collaboration with the blue and everything. So you can take your pick there. You also get a choice of a silver thumb stud or a shipwreck copper. I figured I'd go shipwrecked because, dude, that's kind of the theme here, right? But anyways, there is that. One other final thing before we tear this guy apart, this is not cheap. We are looking at a $400 price tag on here. And considering that you can get these Demkos for, well, not $400, there is a considerable upcharge associated with doing this Cerakote art on this guy and doing all of that. Whether that's going to make sense for you is as much a question about how you feel about the art as anything. But I'm not sitting here trying to tell you that this is like, oh, this is the only way to get one of these. If you like the knife and you don't like the art, then just buy the knife, right? They're not hard to find. But anyways, let's go on ahead and take this little guy apart here. I am going to take out all of the screws on this guy. And the reason for that is, well, will become apparent at a certain point. But you can see here that all the screws are actually colored right now to match the background. But this is something that's going to change because, unfortunately, the 8020.5 design is a little bit sensitive to screw position. Right, and that means that right now, this is basically the longest screws, because you're going to see here, these are longer screws, and then there are some shorter ones too. The long screws are the ones you need when you're installing the clip, and the clip, well, needs to go on this side, so the colors wouldn't match right. They're going with all seafoam in the future, and by the way, I believe that the knife will come with an extra clip that is left-handed, that's ready for lefty carry. But that's why I'm swapping those screws around, and that's why it's going to look a little tiny bit weird once I swap that out. The screws kind of have to go to the other side, unfortunately, in order to make this a thing. So, such is life, I suppose. But anyways, we're going to go ahead and pop the rest of these guys out here. That way, all of my screws are out of there. At least he's... Bro, all of my screws are out of there. I think maybe these little guys are spinning rather than... Okay, there we go. That's a shorter screw. Come on now. There's that. And the final seafoam screw that we remove. And there we go. And now all I got to do, these are T6, by the way. A little fiddly, but that's life. And all we got to do here is take out the main pivot screw. So, this is a really, really cool little piece. Like I said, I'm a big fan of Paul's work more broadly. By the way, watch out for this spring. It decided not to fly across the room today, and I'm kind of grateful for that. But that is something you're going to want to keep an eye out for. But anyways, this is a cool piece, and I do like the 80-20.5. If you want more details about the knife itself, I'll go ahead and check my review of it. For now, I'm just going to kind of take it apart as just a matter of course and kind of show you what's up with it. But anyways, I really like this piece here because, well, honestly, the art's neat. Right, and as I said, that's why you buy this. There are going to be a number of people in the comments already. $400, Nick, do you know how much you can get one from the factory? Yeah, I know. That's exactly the point, right? This is one of those cases, and I think one of those things that we kind of lose track of sometimes in the knife world, right? Very often in the knife world, we conceptualize these objects as being functional tools, and that's fine, that's great, right? In fact, I would argue that I've been pushing back for a while now against people who, basically try and use art to justify making a poor tool. Right? That, to me, is frustrating. By the way, if you're curious about any of the tools I'm using, nickshabazz.com/tools has all the details. But anyways, using some knife pivot lube here, just to get everything set up. But anyways, there were going to be people, obviously, who are going to look at this and go like, oh my God, no, you could pay so much less. And like, if that's your goal, you absolutely can. But it's important, I think, that we kind of keep in mind the fact that at its core, knife making is an art. Right? And oftentimes, and, this is an argument that often comes up when you've got something expensive. But, well, honestly, if it's art and it's inexpensive, no one's complaining. Right? But this is one of those cases where I think the art element of it is maybe even a little bit more out on the surface. It's more plainly available for everybody to see because the thing is literally art. It's literally been drawn on. And so, you're going to be hard-pressed saying, oh, this isn't art, right? No, it's freaking art, like flat out. And I do kind of appreciate, in many ways, this collaboration series because they are really pushing the edges of that. Right? There were anodized knives out there in the world, and certainly there was engraving, right? There were other kinds of art in knife making. This little guy right here, the Valar by Monterey Bay Knives, this is art as well. It's a different kind of art, right? There were lots of art out there in the knife world, but this is a cool one, right? And this is one that I think is going to be very perceptible to a lot of just your average everyday person on the street. By the way, one thing that I will note that I kind of hope that they do before they, as they're doing this process, these knives here particularly have sharp edges on this little shark bar right here, right? And so what I will often do, and what I'll go ahead and do a little bit as I'm talking here, is I will use like a little a diamond file here and kind of knock that edge down a little bit, right? Just getting in there and just removing a little tiny bit of that material, basically chamfering it aggressively. Because out of the box, that edge is a little much, right? It's not the end of any worlds, really, but it isn't my favorite thing. And so this would be a cool thing that they could do, actually, to add a little bit of value here alongside the art, is just to kind of knock this edge down just a little tiny scotch, right? A metric scotch, imperial scotch, doesn't matter, just a scotch, right? But yeah, I think this is one of those areas where they could add a little bit of value. And if they did it before Cerakote, then it would look, well, even better than having to knock a little bit of this nice Cerakote off of there. So that is a thing that you're probably going to want to do when you get the knife, if they haven't done that again already. It's also worth noting this is a prototype, right? This is not the final version that's going to ship. And as is always the case when you get prototypes, there's going to be some differences, right? So when there are differences, that's what you should be expecting, right? And this is this collaboration that is Northern Knives and ColorfulFilth. I've seen enough of their stuff before to believe that they're going to deliver on this, right? But this is a pre-order, and pre-orders should always be handled with a little bit of caution. But okay, so we can go on ahead and put this guy back in there. Now what I'm going to go on ahead and do is swap the screws over. Now this is not something I am in love with, like I said. Because the clip screw needs to be done with the longer sets of screws rather than the shorter ones, you end up moving this guy. You end up having to kind of swap the screws over in order to do that. And on your normal knife, where it's like, do you want gray titanium or gray titanium? Doesn't matter. With this particular prototype, they have colored the screws individually. It looks great, to be clear, absolutely, but at the same time, that is not necessarily ideal. Having all the screws be seafoam will make that a little bit less apparent. One thing that's also worth noting, look at these little holes here. These are D-shaped, and that corresponds to a D shape on these standoffs. which makes these standoffs not free spinning, which is absolutely a beautiful thing. I am a big fan of standoffs that are not made to be free spinning, right? That makes the world better, just simply put. So I'm going to go on ahead and use my T6 driver. Use a little bit of blue Loctite on there. And go ahead and tighten this in here. I believe this is probably the seafoam they are referring to as they are doing that. But yeah, so from the rest of the review, you're going to see the colors are a little bit off, but that's just because of the, well, it's the nature of the beast, so to speak, because with the way they did it on this particular proto, which actually ends up favoring left side carry, which is fine. I'm sure 10% of the population is really happy with that particular choice, but, you know, hey, whatever. So there's this kind of mismatching screw. Oh no! And complete, total end of the world. Everything's crashing to a burning halt and whatnot. Not just a regular halt, a burning halt. Anyways, so I'm a big fan of this kind of work, right? And I think it's kind of a cool little thing. I'm also a big fan of the fact that this is, at its core, not a special, like they've not done something weird or different with this particular knife, right? It's not like this is the only way you can get a particular kind of knife, right? It's not they have an exclusive blade shape or anything like that, right? By the way, note that these have different diameters, so you're going to want to make sure that these two go here and the big boy over here goes here. That is something to keep in mind. Go ahead and drop down a little bit of lubrication. Might have done that already, but hey, who am I if not over lubricating? We will go ahead and put a little bit of lubrication, speaking of over lubricating, right onto the sides of this bad boy, right there, and right there. And I have done that exactly on the wrong side. Although actually I'll need to do it on both sides anyways, so what does it matter? But anyways, so yeah. But I'm a fan of the fact that this is sort of just another version of the 80-20.5, right? What makes it different is just the art. And so it's not people don't have to choose, for instance, whether they like the art or not if they want this special version of the knife. And there's not like a paywall, so to speak, on that, right? If you want the art, you pay extra for the art. And if you don't, you just buy the knife, right? And it's a good knife, and you can get that, like I said, for a cheaper price if you don't happen to be in love with this particular approach. I'm going to go ahead and just drop this on here. And then what I can do, we have now entered spring country, right? I need to install this spring. And the way that this shock lock works, by the way, and you'll see it in other demonstrations, but there's a spring that pushes this guy in the forward direction, right? And so when the knife locks up, this comes over here and prevents it from moving. And then when you pull it back, the knife can close, and then it slips back into place over here, and that provides the detent to close the knife. It's a very nice idea. Great lock, honestly. But the way that you're going to want to reassemble it actually is with the blade fully open, because that's when there is the most room here for that spring to fit in there, right? So when I get that spring, seat him in there. All right, do I have anything else that I've left out? No. So now, rapidly, before that spring decides to take a flying leap, I'm going to go on ahead and drop this scale on there. And I just had to press a little tiny bit on the lock there, which pushed it out, and life is good. Looks like there's a little gunction under there. Hold on. Hitting my little alcohol bottle there so I can get a little bit more booze on this Q-tip. There we go. Clean that out. Beautiful. All right, so I'll go ahead and I will put some Loctite onto this pivot here. Looks like it comes with some, but I'll go ahead and add a little bit more. And take out my T10 right here. And again, I think I'm going to want to pull the shock lock back to decompress some things a little bit. And then kind of take it down to hand tight here. There we go. That was maybe a little over tight to start with. Now on this side, because I am carrying this in my right pocket, and by the way, it is kind of a shame that the clip doesn't match particularly well, but at the same time, trying to do this pattern on the clip on top of things, not necessarily the greatest thing ever, so I can kind of get it. But anyways, so we'll put the clip on there, and again, use a little bit of Loctite, use one of the longer screws here. On yours, there will just be long and short screws. They should all be the same color. At least if the Northern Knives folks. And Colorful Filth Paul are to be believed. I have no reason to think they're going to lie to us about this. But anyways, like I said, I'm just a fan. I really, really, really think that this takes knives less seriously. It's a serious knife, to be clear, right? It's a great piece, and it is a knife that could very easily be somebody's one and only knife. If you have a octopus and or shark and or old school technical diving enthusiast in your life, this could be their one and only knife roughly forever, because the 80-20.5 is an excellent pocket knife, right? There is not a whole lot that I can complain about with it, right? Modulo that little bit of chamfer need here on the shark tab, which I probably could have hit a little harder, but you know, hey, whatever. You can always do that later on if it bugs me. But anyways, so we'll put that in there, and then double check everything's functioning beautifully. I think I might be too loose in the pivot. I am. The way I check that is just by shaking back and forth there. If I feel any play, then it is too loose. And so I tighten. Okay, I think I might be a little too tight. There's no play, but the pivot's running slow. So we're going to back this up just a little tiny bit. That's very little and very tiny, but can I go a little looser than that? Or am I going to pay the price? Okay. No blade play. Beautiful action. Clip installed. Life is good. So look, overall, my feelings here are a couple of things, right? The price here is high. $400, that's definitely a premium. At another level, though, this is not exactly a cheap thing to do, I imagine, because you have Cerakote, and you have Cerakote that's sort of differentially done. It looks like they've kind of blasted or lasered off the Cerakote in some areas and then anodized in others. And, like, this clearly takes some handwork to be able to do properly, at least based on my understanding of it, right? And so in that regard, they've put the work in to make this look good. And also, frankly, it's a unique, limited sort of piece. I don't know how many they're doing of these, and they may do future runs of them, for all I know. But at the same time, it is not something that's going to be around forever. And so this is one of those things where ultimately you're going to have to make a decision as to the, well, whether that extra money brought about by adding all of this fancy matters to you, or whether you want to just go with something that is a little bit more, well, regular. The choices you have to make, obviously, are the shipwrecked thumb stud versus the stainless. I feel like I went the right choice here. If you go in this way, you go that way, right? That makes a lot of sense. As for the blade shape, I chose the shark foot here because, well, frankly, it was mixing it up a little bit. I have one of these guys in the clip point already. And it's a great knife. It's a great blade shape. And the shark foot is also quite nice, right? It is still a nice thin blade. It is still, it's still got a lot of joy to it. It is just, well, different shape. And so if you want something that's a little closer to a Wharncliffe, then this is going to be the vibe. Otherwise, you can go with the full clip point. They are both going to be about equivalently awesome. Right? But overall, my feelings, like I said, this is a great knife. The 20.5 is a great knife to start with. And then throw some cool artwork on there, then that's great too. And so if you like this art, if you like this knife, if you like the Demko sort of affair, then you should absolutely pick one of these guys up. If this isn't your taste, then, well, stick around, wait, right? Northern Knives and Paul have done a bunch of stuff before, right? And there are some that I've actually missed as well. But they've done a bunch of stuff before, and it's all been pretty cool. And so if you're not feeling this particular collab, then wait for the next one. I have no reason to believe there's going to be a next one, but I have a lot of reason to hope, right? Because it's a cool series, and chances are, if you didn't like this theme, you might like the next one. So anyways, there we go. That's what's going on here. If you like this guy, then I think you should absolutely bite. Otherwise, if you're not really caring for the artwork, then you might want to just squid this one out. Okay, anyways, that pun went deep. Yeah. All right, have an absolutely wonderful rest of your dive. Bye now.